From beautiful British Columbia, you're watching John Lovelace's West Coast Escapes.
Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be. Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be.
On today's show, we tell the story about the greatest West Coast escape of the year, when John leads 100 aircraft into the Yukon for a week of adventure in the land of the midnight sun. Can an armada of 100 aircraft make it into the Yukon safely? Find out on today's special episode, Yukon 2010, the Midnight Sun Challenge.
Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be.
Wow, today on West Coast Escapes, do we ever have a special show lined up for you? It's all about a super flight. It would be a mission when 127 private aircraft would fly into the Yukon and go into Whitehorse. In fact, as it turned out, it would be the largest collection of aircraft parked at the Whitehorse Airport since World War II. So sit back and enjoy our special edition of West Coast Escapes. The year is 1909. The date, February the 23rd. The dull drone of a little 35 horsepower engine echoes across a frozen lake in Bedeque, Nova Scotia, and propels man into the air for the first time ever in Canada. 101 years later, the scene is a little different. It's not so chilly in July, and we're loading up the Piper Navajo with a ton of baggage and fuel, and getting ready to set off for Wetaskiwin, Alberta. There, I'll join a group of aircraft that left Ontario 2 days earlier. From Wetaskiwin, I'll be making a detour back to Quesnel, British Columbia, to meet up with still more aircraft. Our mission is to fly due north, past the 60th parallel, into the land of mystery, of gold, of midnight sun, and of adventure. And if it all goes well, we will have amassed a flying group of 100 aircraft on our journey. It will be, I'm told, the largest single group of aircraft to fly into the Yukon since World War II. This is exciting, leading 100 aircraft into a small airport. It's not for the faint of heart, and a lot of things can go wrong. But I've had some practice. In July of 2009, in celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Silver Dart taking into the air, I led a group of 100 aircraft across the country. We estimate that the group flew 500,000 kilometers in total, as we stopped in 8 cities along the way. And a funny thing happens when pilots traverse that sort of distance together. A real camaraderie develops. And by the time it was over, we all knew we had to do this trip again.
I would sail away over northern skies.
So here we are. I'm heading into Wetaskiwin to meet up with the Eastern group. They've already made overnight stops at Thunder Bay, Ontario and Brandon, Manitoba. They've left the rich boreal forest behind them, and they're over the prairies of Alberta. And as I pass over the monoliths that are the northern Canadian Rockies, I'm ready to join them. After 2.5 hours at 11,000 feet, we touch down at Wetaskiwin to join our fellow pilots. Wetaskiwin is a small town, a little more than 12,000 people, but it's the home of the world-class Reynolds Alberta Museum. The museum is dedicated to all things mechanical and houses over 350 automobiles and over 70 aircraft from all era. But this part of Alberta landscape is known as Tornado Alley. We are looking at the mother of all cells moving in here right now.
Wow.
And we've got about 20 aircraft on the ground here.
Look at that.
So
You got,
we're
up,
all
one down
sort
over
of sweating
here
this
as
one a
well.
bit.
Yeah. Doing its thing.
It's a busy morning with 50 aircraft heading towards Whitehorse.
We're trying to get ahead of some weather. We have a window here. If we don't get going, it could get nasty at the end.
But I'm taking the Navajo and the film crew and heading west to Quesnel to hook up with another group of 50 aircraft. This is a perfect day for flying. Last night's storm is cleared and the Navajo is clean after a free wash. The flight to Quesnel leads directly back over the Rockies and takes me right by 12,900 foot Mount Robson.
Over on our right, it's the Fraser Valley, and actually the headwaters of the Fraser flows north.
At Quesnel, we can quickly see that we're not the first to get in. Several aircraft that are participating in the flight have already gathered. There's a feeling of sheer excitement in the air. Well, for this group, this is just the beginning. They all had to get here somehow, and as pilots usually do, everyone has a story to tell.
Flight was absolutely wonderful. We had to dodge some cumulus clouds, but it worked out really well this morning.
And we stopped at Williams Lake, which was a new experience, and came up the canyon routes and looked at everything and took some pictures and had a really good time.
How was your flight?
Excellent. It was a little bumpy, but nothing wrong with that.
Tonight there's a weather briefing for tomorrow and feasts for everyone to enjoy. In town, the people of Quesnel are celebrating Billy Barker Days, and some of our pilots may join them. Others may turn in early, as tomorrow morning is a big flight north into the land of the midnight sun. Coming up on West Coast Escapes, 100 aircraft take to the air to converge on Whitehorse, Yukon, in the biggest northern air convoy ever since the Second World War. It's a beautiful morning in Quesnel, British Columbia. The roar of aircraft engines break the early morning air.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Looking forward to another severe, clear day today.
Our armada includes just about every type of aircraft flying in Canada today. There's the Cessna 172s, Vans RVs, and even a Chinese-built military trainer. Joining me on today's flight is my old friend Raylene Ranger from Wings Over Canada days. Raylene's day job today is flying Boeing 737s for WestJet. She does a great job there and was recently featured in the Day of the Life of an Aircraft Pilot segment we did on the sister TV series, The Aviators. But today, Raylene will enjoy some hands-on flying in the piston-driven Navajo as we head due north. Our flight from Quesnel will take us non-stop to Whitehorse. Our onboard flight management systems are showing 3 hours and 50 minutes, easily within the 6-hour range of this aircraft.
Once upon a day, and not so long ago, there was a time I had nothing more than time. Saw my life stretched out, lazily before me. No one there to catch you when you fall.
Now, the Navajo will do the trip quicker than most of the other aircraft, so we can be on the ground to meet everyone when we get into Whitehorse.
November Juliet Lima Tower, that T-Hawk has in sight. He'll be turning to follow you. You're number 1, wind calm, clear to land, runway 31 left.
Whitehorse Radio, November 5834.
Wow, what a great trip that was. Love it.
Whitehorse is a 21st century city with the feel of a 19th century gold rush town. The folks here are literally rolling out the red carpet for us. Eric Nielsen International Airport will be our home base for the next 6 days. They haven't had this many aircraft here since World War II, when Whitehorse was an important base for the transport of aircraft and supplies to Russia. Today, the lure of the Yukon makes this airport a major international hub for aircraft arriving from USA, Canada, and Europe. The main operator here is Air North, which operates propeller-driven aircraft and a fleet of 737s. And Air North has been a big supporter of our aerial armada visit. Air North 737 Captain Mike Beeman is our chief ground steward, and nobody knows this airport better than him. Today, he's got his hands full as aircraft are arriving every minute.
I flew in from Haliburton, Ontario, 33 hours in my Piper Colt. Every single leg was the best leg I ever did, and the last leg into Whitehorse was just amazing.
I'm very impressed. I'm glad everybody made it okay, and I understand there's still a few more to come, but the weather's nice and the hospitality's great here, so.
Well, our primary role from the coordinator here is when the aircraft come in on 119, we come down here, we have our orange sticks, try to direct traffic to available parking spots. That's essentially is our job. And everybody seems to find that works out quite well. And then where possible, we push the aircraft in, give them a hand, say the hospitality tent is over there.
I used to live up here. This is like coming home again. It's just awesome. And so we were flying at 115 miles an hour from Watson Lake all the way in here, hanging on the edge of the prop. But we got down to 4 gallon an hour burn, so that was sweet.
By the end of the first day, 80 aircraft have landed, and tired crews head down to hotels for a little R&R. There's still another 30 aircraft due to arrive tomorrow and the day after. Getting all of these airplanes to Whitehorse was the result of months of planning for the committee and the flight crews. But now the real flying begins. Over the next 5 days, these aircraft will undertake hundreds of flight sorties into the Yukon wilderness. In all, we've calculated over 400 individual flight plans will be needed, with stops including Dawson City, Atlin, and Fort Selkirk. This will be a big challenge for some of our city pilots who have always flown off of paved runways. The success or failure of this flight hangs in the balance as we prepare to fly into the Yukon frontier. This morning we are flying low and slow across an ancient landscape. Strangely, things look simply different up here in the Yukon. That's because while we're only 300 miles to the Arctic Circle, much of this area was never glaciated. As a change of pace, I'm not doing the flying today. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I've left the Navajo behind. We are heading into an old town site that is deserted, and it has a runway that's deserted too, and I don't trust it. So for this trip, we're using 2 helicopters, a Robinson R-44 and a Bell 206. As I stare out the window at this rugged landscape that's passing beneath, I think back on the World Wind Week up here in the north. Another 27 aircraft did arrive the next day, and that got us well over our 100 aircraft mark. I've always thought of Whitehorse as some 19th century exhibit in a Disney World. It's all here, but the difference is that up in the Yukon, it's all real. For our pilots who've just flown in here, they were tired from a day of exploring, so they capped it all off with a banquet at the Yukon Transportation Museum. On Monday, we opened the gates of the Eric Nielsen International to the public. Because thousands of Whitehorse residents made their way out here to view the airplanes, we made this day a no-fly day and prohibited any aircraft from even starting up. There'll be lots of chances later in the week for pilots to fly in an air-to-air photo and video shoot. Now this is where our aspiring bush pilots fly in close proximity to the camera aircraft. And for some of our pilots, this would be their first experience in formation flying, and it requires a constant radio communication, slow and deliberate controls, and a steady hand at the throttle.
You just gotta slow down there, okay? You gotta anticipate that. Jim, it's me. I'm probably on your right wing. I'm gonna be a little bit out over the lake.
Around the territory.
These days, we would make up the bulk of the flying on the trip. Each morning began the same way, with a detailed weather and flight briefing. The aircraft were split into small groups of no more than 20 aircraft in a rotating round robin, where groups of aircraft would fly to their choice of Atlin and Dawson or Haines Junction, or just do some sightseeing. Each of these destinations would offer our pilots different challenges. Now, Dawson City has a 5,000-foot gravel runway that's situated in a narrow mountain valley.
November Julie by short funnel 02.
The flight to Dawson does offer some stunning scenery, and the town is steeped in the history of the Klondike Gold Rush. For pilots heading into Atlin, they are greeted with a 4,000-foot gravel runway high on a plateau over the old town site. Or for the pilots on floats, they could land right on Atlin Lake and pull right up to the town dock. And this is exactly what this Cessna 208 Caravan decided to do. Now, all of these destinations are historically significant to the region. Dawson was the center of the Yukon Gold Rush and became populated by thousands of miners and prospectors in search of instant riches. And Atlin was a popular tourist destination way back in the 20s and became known as the Switzerland of the North. So this brings us back to this flight in the Bell 206, flying in tandem with the Robinson R-44. Our destination is Fort Selkirk, which up until the creation of the Alaska Highway was a crucial trading post for the region. We have turned our helicopters directly on a due north heading on a flight which will take us over the 50-kilometer-long Lake La Berge, made famous in the creation of Sam McGee.
That water is nice. I can almost smell that water, the cleanness.
The weather here in the Yukon has been good for most of our visit, but our luck has run out. It's starting to rain, but the bad weather conditions couldn't have happened at a better time. For a fixed-wing aircraft, this may provide a challenge, but with these two helicopters, we can fly along the river safely. And despite the fact that I fly fixed-wing aircraft, I've always confessed that there's no better way to see Canada than in a huge bubble window of a helicopter.
Folks or friends I think about, I left them far behind. Went off to face a brand new world and life I hoped to find. I had hoped to find. That's when I got this feeling I'm lost up in the sky. Those mid-Atlantic blues, at times I have to cry.
We offloaded our film crew at Fort Selkirk to shoot another segment on the West Coast Escapes TV show. Then, as if on cue, we were greeted by a group of canoes heading downriver. And in that moment, it seemed a perfect representation of this ancient place. a land that, while moving forward, is still locked in its past. We adventured here in one of man's newest forms of transportation, only to be met by one of the oldest.
Down the strand at Holshamore, as the ship set out on the waves, used to think of the bravest of Sutherland men, all those who rest in their grave. Where have you been, Robbie Macbeth?
100 tired pilots and crew members turn out for the closing banquet. It's time to exchange stories of great adventures in our little aircraft. Tomorrow morning, we'll climb back into the plains and scatter to the far corners of the country. Till next year, when we'll do it all again, when we head up into the roadless wilderness of northern Saskatchewan. Why do we do it? Because our pilots are adventurers, flying small machines, big distances, into wilderness. Aviation in Canada has only been in existence for 100 years. We're lucky to be living in an age of personal aircraft, and who knows what the next 100 years will bring. In the meantime, for me at least, it's a case of carpe diem, flying ourselves over wilderness in the best country on earth. That's, after all, the purpose of the Century Flight Club, and that's just to see Canada by air. I'm John Lovelace, and hope you can join us in our next adventure in July 2011.
Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be. Let's get a dream of how